Thank you.
Hello there. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad you're joining us today. Tonight, this morning, whatever time it is where you are, I hope you're going to enjoy the program. My name is Lois Richter, and the program is called Birding with Lois. So, we are going to be now a bi weekly program. That means every other week. And tonight's is May 26th. And then 2 weeks from now, we'll have another one, etc. Today I have with me a person who is going to, well, I'll tell you how this happened. He's part of the after hours community, why I am also. And I happen to be talking about the show and saying, gee, I wish we could figure out how to get a bird cam, how to see, something out the window or whatever. And a little bit later, Chris wrote to me and he said, by the way, I've made this thing. It's not really a bird cam, but it's a webcam for streaming 24/7. And so I got so all excited, called him up, talked to him, and he has agreed to come on tonight and show us how he made his very own webcam. So hello, Chris. How are you?
Hello, Lois. Great to be part of the show, and I'm excited to talk about what we're doing.
Yeah. All right. So, Chris, let's get started. You're on. Show us, sort of like that cooking show. The list of ingredients, and then how do you put them together, and then the final dish as we present it. So, go
Right.
for it.
Well, first, I should probably start with a little bit. This is a camera that I put together. It's actually for tennis. And, I do a lot of sports live streaming, and I have 6 of these cameras for our 6 tennis courts. And when Lois had talked about having a bird camera that you stream that could stream 24/7, I think these would actually work really well for that. And so what I have um, is it's all based on these ADA cameras, and this is the ADA HD 200 NDI camera.
So this is in itself a separate camera. I mean, it's
this
the whole thing. It's a
this is
camera.
this is a camera. It's
And
got
why did you pick that one?
well, the reason I picked this camera is because, for one, it's NDI,
What's
and
that
so
mean?
it means what is the abbreviation? Is it network device interface? I think basically it is a network protocol that allows me to get a video signal into a switching software like vMix or Wirecast or something like that. And it's also powered by PoE, which is power over Ethernet. And so I can plug just one single network cable into this camera, and it will power it, and it will send the signal, and that's all. And for my use case, that was super important. Where I'm putting these cameras, I didn't have power. And so if I can use network and PoE, I can just run one cable to the location, and it just works.
And the cable that you run, is that sending messages to the camera from someplace else and back out, or is it a one-way thing, or what?
It's network, so it's bi-directional. It works both ways. It's going to send me the video feed, and I can remote into it and open its configuration settings and change settings. And because it's a network camera, it can stream directly from the camera, and so I can do all those settings from a web browser, basically. And so
So
it
you
makes
need
it
to have a separate computer paired with or working with or something, right?
to configure it. Yes, once it's configured, it kind of runs on its own. And technically you could control it. You could log into the settings with your phone as well. So it's basically just this little box just creates its own little web server that you can connect to on your local network and go into it and change the settings. And
Okay, so you were showing us a camera,
yeah,
and
so this is the heart of the thing is this camera. And this camera, I think the MSRP is
can you
somewhere.
can you show us the toys again? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had an overhead camera to look at.
Oh, wait a minute. I thought I did too. There we go.
There we go.
So yeah, so this is the camera. It retails for about $450. You can find it cheaper some places. I work for an educational institution. The educational pricing on it was like $300, so it was significantly cheaper, but your mileage may vary on that. One of the other reasons that I like this camera is because it's just a little box camera. Everything's in it, but it also has a removable lens. And so this is just a C mount lens. So it comes with a super wide lens, but you can easily add a longer zoom lens. And so just like that, we've got this camera with a nice long 70 millimeter C-mount zoom lens on it.
And is that what you put into the one that you're using for birding?
This is not. This is a little bit bigger. The one that I actually put into it is I think it's a 5 to 50 millimeter zoom lens. And give you kind of, let's show. Let's go there. And so to give you an idea, I've got, like I said, I have several of these cameras, and the view you're looking at now is the camera with the original small wide lens. And that little box you see in the right-hand side, that is the bird camera. And so when I switch to that one, you'll see how much closer you can get. And so I don't know if you can kind of see it, the bird feeder is over top of that bush next to the yellow slide in the background. And with the zoomed in lens, I can get a whole lot closer. And so one of the things that I thought would be important when making this bird camera is that, where the birds congregate may not be exactly where you can put a camera. And so with a little bit of a zoom lens, that camera is probably 30 feet from the bird feeder. And so it's nowhere near that, and I can zoom in and still get a good picture.
Okay, back to overhead and show us the next bit.
So as it sits right here, this camera, it could be all we do. And because we want it out in the weather, we have this it's basically a security housing. I mean, you can kind of go to any Walmart or Target and kind of look up in the corner, and they've got probably one of these on the outside looking out at the parking lot. It's just a security camera enclosure. It's like $20, $30, something like that. And so with that, this one, but you can slides right in there. And now,
how is that attached?
So there's this little mount right here. You can see this, that just screw mounts to the bottom of the camera.
Did it come with the camera, or did you make that?
This is part of the case. And so this piece right here fits right into the case. And you can kind of see there's little holes right there. And those holes are for screws. And so you can screw that down. For a bird camera, it probably doesn't matter all that much. But if you're moving the camera around, or if it was getting jostled, you'd want to screw that down. And so that wouldn't come out. So if you went upside down, everything would all stay in place. So that's all part of this little security enclosure. And then what I could do is just take a little, and this one, I added this little piece right here. It's just a little pass-through connector. That's waterproof, and you don't necessarily need that, but I've got it. And so at this point, you could just plug this network cable in, and then plug this into your PoE switch or a PoE injector. And what those are is the injector is just takes a regular network. It just takes a regular network plug, and it adds a little power to it, And so it comes into here, it comes into the camera with the network connection and the power connection. And so that's how the camera gets power. And there are some switches that have that built in, and there are some switches that don't have that built in. And if they don't, you could buy a little injector that just kind of adds that into the line.
Okay, you're getting me lost again. Let's back up and look at the overhead. You had a short cable that had very colorful, that had Ethernet on both ends,
Lost my
and
headphones.
you put it into the camera.
So this is a PoE injector. And what this would do is you would just take this, and you got your little in, and you plug that in, and that would, now this end goes into your network switch.
Is that inside that box, or is that someplace outside the box?
That would be like your router from, like if you had Comcast often gives you the little router with little ports in it, or, in the old days, the little Linksys routers, the Wi-Fi, basically your internet connection. This is the same thing that would plug, like if you were to plug your desktop computer into your home network, that's where this would go.
And so is that outside in the box also, or is
Nope.
that through the hole that you made?
This would go, because this is what's inserting into the power. And so there's your power plug. And so this is going to get plugged into the power, and this is going to get plugged into the switch. And then you would take a second one that comes out, and then that one goes to the camera. And so from your router, this is just plain old internet going into the box. And then out of the box, it comes internet and power together on the same cable, which gives me internet to this network, to this camera, and powers the camera as well.
Okay, so let's see if I've got that. The thing that we're looking at now that has the blue cord coming out of it, it's eventually going to have another cord coming out the other end that's power. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and then the missing part goes from there. Oh, doesn't
like
have
that.
to go through the waterproof hole?
It doesn't have to.
Okay, so that one would be longer, so it could go from a protected area to wherever you got your camera set up, right?
Correct. So yeah, so you would go to the in with a little short one just to your router, and this would probably be plugged into the same power strip that your router was in.
Uh-huh.
And then the out would be a little long cable that goes from your router to wherever you're going to put this camera. In my case, my router is right down here, but my camera is kind of out the door and around the back, and so I have a long cable that just kind of goes around and back and out the back.
Okay.
And that long cable just plugs directly into the camera.
How long can that cable be and still have a signal? Or maybe it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, it used to be if you got the cable too long, you lost stuff.
Right. So the spec on Ethernet is right about 300 feet. And with PoE, that's sometimes it's a little bit shorter, and it's even a little shorter depending on how much draw you're putting on the electrical. Basically, it's kind of one of those things where your mileage may vary, and the typical answer in office hours, it depends.
It depends. Well, if it didn't work, would the whole thing just stop working, or would you get fuzziness, or?
It just wouldn't work.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you exceeded the distance for the power, well, the power might be finicky. It might come on, but not boot totally up. If you were so far away that the power drop was significant enough for that case. If you were far enough away that you exceeded the network specs, it just wouldn't work. You just get no internet, no network. So.
Okay. And this is all assuming that you are getting power and the internet connection through that Ethernet wire.
Correct.
Now, does it also have the capability of connecting by Wi-Fi, so there is no Ethernet wire, or would you then have to figure out a battery or something?
So it does not. There's no Wi-Fi. That's so again, when I started, I kind of explained where this came from. And this was not designed for birding, but I think it would work for birding. Mm-hmm. So it would not be depending on your particular situation, this may not be a good choice. If you were looking to try and get something Wi-Fi or
No, I'm just asking because
Yeah.
all this tech stuff, man.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, you can go down a rabbit hole for sure. But it's
Okay, so any more pieces than the two boxes, the enclosure, and one cord and two cords and one
Yes.
cable.
So this is the basic setup, and this will get you an image. This will get you video. If you need audio, then we need to add some more pieces.
Okay, let's look at that.
And so what we have here is a microphone. It's just it's an omnidirectional lavalier microphone. It's a condenser microphone, which means it needs phantom power in order for it to work. So,
did you just say phantom power?
Phantom power, and that is an audio term. Some microphones are designed in a way that they just need a little extra power in order to work well, and that power comes down the line. It's very similar to the concept of PoE in that we're sending power with network and PoE, and with phantom power, we're sending power with audio. And so you're sending your power down your audio lines to power this microphone. So in order to power that microphone, well, let's step back a minute. The audio input for this camera is what's called an unbalanced stereo input. And so this would be like the headphones to your CD player.
Did you say that the microphone's going to the camera?
The microphone will get to the camera, yes. And
why?
Because we need to get because the camera does not have any built-in audio. And so we need to add audio to the camera. And so in order to get audio, I mean, in a production, we could run cables back to a switcher and have audio cables, and it wouldn't have to go into the camera. But for this case, we want audio built in with our image. And so we're going to plug the audio into the camera so that the video stream that comes out of this camera has audio with it.
Well, that makes perfect sense. But if you put a microphone inside a closed up box, how can it hear anything?
So this is a waterproof box. It is not a watertight box. What that means is that it's not tight all the way around. And so I can kind of fish this cable through, pop that in the front. And so now you can see there's that little microphone right there, little microphone just on the front of the camera.
Can't quite see it. Can you put it a little more in the center? There we go. Okay.
It's just kind of clipped right on there. And then it just runs through the little gap there in the housing.
Okay. So you got a holy box to put it in.
Yep, it's just this is a box that will keep all the water out, but if you dropped it in the river, it would not protect it for anything. So we've got this microphone that we need to get into the camera, and microphone is a mic level signal, and the camera is a unbalanced stereo signal. And so what that means is they don't match. And so this camera is expecting a left and a right channel and in an unbalanced format. And
unbalanced means they can be different?
So what balanced means is when you send audio, you've got a ground and you've got your audio wave. And over the course of a cable on an unbalanced signal, you can kind of pick up some static and some power interference and stuff like that. And what balanced does is it sends your ground, you send your live, and you send what's called your return. And so you've got in an XLR cable, you got external, live, return. And external would be your ground. You have your line, which is one wave, and your return, which is the same wave, but inversed. And so because they're inversed, the audio hardware then can figure out what the noise is and get rid of some of that noise. And so that's
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I got this. I've got my real sound, the one I want to keep.
Yep.
And then I've got upside down the other sound, which has been generated by the mechanical devices.
Yeah.
And then at the other end, it looks to see if there's a difference, and the difference is the noise, so it can remove the noise. Did I get that
correct.
Right? All right.
Correct. Yeah.
How does the mechanical device know that this is the sound and not noise?
So it's because of the inverse, and so if they're completely opposite each other, and because those waves are completely opposite,
Okay.
it can.
So if they're completely opposite, then there wouldn't be any noise. Where's the noise coming from?
It has to do with the phasing of the signal, and so you got your. Yeah, I know. We'll put it. It doesn't matter. For our intents and purposes, you don't really need to know. All you need to know is we need to convert an XLR to a stereo line signal, and for that we've got this little.
You got another box. I knew you'd have another little black box.
Yeah.
You seem to have a black box for everything.
Yeah, and so we've just got a little black box that takes my balanced input, which is right there, and then we take another cable, and we want unbalanced output, and this cable right here is what's called a tip sleeve. And so there's two conductors. So that's our just the ground and the single phase. And then on this side, this is a tip ring sleeve. And those in this cable, basically what that's doing is splitting that one signal and sending it into two channels. Mm-hmm. And so your left and your right channels. For all intents and purposes, it doesn't matter because they're the same audio. They're not stereo. You're not hearing different in the left and right, but you're sending it to both channels. And that just gets plugged in to the audio of the camera. And so now we've got our little preamp. This is a Rolls MP13 that's going to give our phantom power to the mic, convert the mic from a balanced mono input into a unbalanced dual mono output that the camera will take.
Okay, more questions. So the little box in your hand, the Rolls, it is the device that is doing the translation between one format and the other format. Is that true?
Correct.
Does it have a battery in it, or does it need power? How does it run?
That's a good question, and that's the next step. So we need to power that. And so to power that, what we're going to end up doing is we have this little device right here, which is called a PoE splitter. And so remember, this cable is coming out with our PoE. It's got our network and our power, and we're going to plug that in. And so now on the other side of this device, we have a network cable that has our internet, and this probably looks familiar to everyone. It's just a 12-volt DC power. And so we can plug the network into the camera. We can take that 12-volt power. We can take this little doodad, which is just a Y cable, which takes that single 12-volt power, turns it into two 12-volt powers. And one of those 12-volt powers goes to the Rolls, to the preamp, and the other one goes to the camera. So this is just the camera cable. And so this camera can be powered directly from the network cable via PoE. But in this case, we need to take that power out of the PoE to also power the Rolls. And so we are powering this camera in the old-fashioned way, kind of, by just using a regular power cord for the camera. So that would just go in there.
So, do you have two wires going into your security box, or is it just the PoE wire and then you're messing with it?
Just one. Yep. So this camera, in this case right here, this would just go down here into that little pass-through box, and we tuck everything in there, and then pass-through thing at the bottom, the network cable at the bottom, just one network cable goes in, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. So what's the little gray box next to your hand that's outside the security box?
This one?
That, yeah.
This is the PoE injector. This is what would go. This would go next to your router.
Oh, that's the thing that goes outside. Okay.
That's the thing that gives you the power. Takes the power, adds it to the network. And so that.
Are you sure everything's going to fit in that box? It looks awfully crowded.
It's not. It's not going to fit in that box with this particular lens. The lens that's actually in the camera is a little bit smaller, and so this particular lens would not all fit in the box. But like I said, the slightly smaller lens that I'm actually using, it's a third the size of this lens, so it will fit in the box with the little rolls and give you audio. And
okay, do those security boxes come in different sizes? If one
they do
had
come in
a
different sizes.
bigger lens.
Yeah, you could probably find bigger sizes that would fit with a longer lens.
So if you've got a camera in there with a lens that is a, I don't know, 5700, whatever it is, that's a zoom lens. How in the world can you zoom it inside a box?
So typically once the zoom is set, it's set. You're not, once you've got this configured so that your camera's aligned and looking at the thing you want, you're not going to zoom in and out. It is what it is. And so what you would do is set it up, and then you could do one of two things. You could send your video back to your computer and pull it up on your phone, and then look at the settings on your phone. Let me show you that. So if I go to here, so this is the settings for that camera. And so when I go to the settings page, it's just a web page connected to one of my cameras, and you can see a little video there. And so I could pull this up on my phone, and while I'm looking at my phone, I can have my hand on the manual zoom lens of the camera and just kind of zoom and focus and get it all tied into where I need it to be. And if you were super fancy, these cameras also have an HDMI input, and you can plug an HDMI into a little HDMI monitor and do it that way too. But,
HDMI?
Yeah. HDMI, standard video TV signal. So.
Okay. So do you happen to have one that shows us the outside of the security box? I mean, do you have one that you can, even if it doesn't work, that we can look at?
In terms of what?
In terms of seeing what it is that we're going to have to mount.
Oh yeah. So ultimately, this is our security box, and there's little holes right there, and it actually comes with a mount that screws into here that you could screw onto the wall. Hold on one second.
And that little black thing is where the cable's going to come out, right?
Okay, so go to, So you can kind of see that is the bird cam in use right there. You can see it's got a little mount there on the bottom. You can mount on the wall or on the floor or anything that I've just got it screwed into a 2x4.
And in order to adjust it, do you have to like unscrew it and move it a quarter of an inch and rescrew it in, or does that
Yep.
base have a turn?
It does have a turn, and there's just little screws, and you just kind of give them a little bit of, just loosen them up just a little bit so you can rotate it side to side and up and down, and then just give it another tighten down, and it tightens right in.
Okay. All right. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and it's like I said, this is not a camera this is not a birding camera, but it's something that I think would work.
If you pointed at birds, it's a birding camera.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where you had a need, and I thought, oh, this thing works for that. And it may not be the perfect birding camera, but with the tools and the equipment I had, I think it.
So let's
well.
put up the next question, because now we get to the difficult part. And we should see that question popping up on the screen right now. And it says, Chris, how do you connect your webcam to the internet? What challenges are there having a bird cam streaming 24/7? What have you thought about, done about? Talk to us about streaming.
Yeah, and so this comes back to this particular camera. And one of the benefits of this particular camera is that I can stream directly from the camera. And so if I go back to, here is our settings page. And I can go into the settings of this camera. I can go into video transmission. And right there, I can put an RTMP feed right into that field, turn this on, click save, and it is streaming to that feed. And so for like YouTube, if you wanted to stream live to YouTube, one of the things to do that, you generate an RTMP feed. And so you could set up a YouTube feed, create an event, get your RTMP feed, paste it right into here, save it, turn it on, and you are then streaming directly from the camera to the internet.
So in order to have an RTMP feed, you use the camera settings. And in order for it to make it go someplace, you have to have a YouTube account with something that will accept an RTPM feed?
Yes. Yeah. If you're going to stream live to YouTube, part of streaming live to YouTube that is generating this RTMP, this little string called an RTMP URL, and you just copy that string from your YouTube settings into your camera settings, and it will send that.
So whatever the camera is putting out is what's going into the YouTube feed. So is that
Yep.
what we're doing tonight on our show? Have we got an RTMP feed?
Yes, I believe. Yeah. That's your RTMP.
Oh, cool.
And there's some things that work a little different in that there's like, and Zoom maybe, I'm not entirely sure on this, but there may be some API things in the background where you don't actually see that RTMP feed, but that's essentially what's happening, is that there is an RTMP URL that Zoom is sending to in order to make this live.
Okay. And I know that there's a couple of people in the community, including Ken Jordan, who is our webmaster supreme, who are able to just put it up on a website. And so maybe I'll get Ken to weigh in on that and show us how to do that. So there you have it, folks. The fantastic, wonderful, made by Chris webcam.
Probably way overcomplicated for the purpose, but I think it works well.
Well, can y'all put up this other feed that we've got here on the panel? My streaming from the hummingbird feeder. I hope that they can get that up as a 2-up. There we go. And so what that is that's my husband's iPhone logged into a Zoom meeting and pointed out through the window. I've got a tripod. So that that bird feeder is probably about 5.5, 6 feet off the ground. And we're in the house up a little bit, so it's looking down probably from 10 feet. And I thought it was going to be great, but it's not, because that is logged into a Zoom meeting, and so you're seeing the Zoom person. Okay, we can switch back from that now. And what I found, though, is if I have my iPhone and I have that little program called webcam, it's wonderful, then I can have my iPhone be an alternate camera on my screen. So I can be in a Zoom meeting just like this, and I can push a little button and it'll switch to the other camera. And, you push a little button, it switches back. So the thing with that is I can zoom that thing. I can make it 3 times size. I can make it half size, so it's like really wide. So I have lots of controls. I thought I could do that here on this Zoom meeting. I can't. There's just one. It's what it sees. Anyway. Okay. So anything more, Chris, that you want to talk about the webcam thing?
Not really. I mean,
okay.
Well, I guess maybe just a little. In terms of, you talked about 24-hour streaming, and this camera is completely capable. You put it up, you could send a stream for 24 hours, 365, just constantly streaming data. But one thing to remember about that is that uses data, and if you're in a place that where your internet is not great or is metered, that could be a problem, because it uses bandwidth. And so that's just one thing to think about, is if you're trying to set up a 24-hour type stream, is that you are using your internet bandwidth to do that 24/7. So just something to be aware of.
And the image that comes out of that camera is at a fixed size, or can it be dumbed down a little bit, maybe half size or something?
Yep, you can.
And I don't mean size of image, I mean number of pixels.
Yep, you can. The lowest it will go down to is 640 by 360, and the highest it will go to is 1920 by 1080. And you can also adjust your frame rates. The highest frame rate it'll go is 60, and the lowest it'll go is 3.
Well, frame rate is something that's fixed, isn't it? I mean, on YouTube you have to have a certain frame rate, don't you?
The video that they deliver is a fixed frame rate. But for example. And
what is it, do you know?
I believe it's either 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second. I think
so wouldn't it make sense to send it what it's going to use? I mean, there's no point in sending it faster frame rate than it's going to put out.
There's no point in sending it a faster frame rate than it's going to put out. There is some possible benefits of sending the slower one, in that it just uses less bandwidth. And so if the video you're watching, maybe at 15 frames per second is not super smooth, but if you're not trying to get super smooth video, it might be good enough.
And if it's a windy day and you're just seeing the leaves flutter a little bit, it doesn't really matter. Now, if you were doing, I don't know, surgery or something, you'd want the best quality image that you could possibly get. But, watching hummingbirds is not brain surgery.
Right. Well,
it's not even rocket science.
In everything streaming, it's all about compromises. You're always making compromises. You're giving up something for something else. You're in your camera, you're making compromises for the light and the grain and things like that. And if your bandwidth is low, you may have to sacrifice your frame rate or your resolution in order to get your signal through. Just it's the nature of the beast.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris. That was very, very, very enlightening. And I think I'm going to go on to the next question, if we could have that up, please. And this one actually it's just a correction. A couple of shows ago, we were talking about how to make the nectar for your hummingbird feeder. And the formula is absolutely correct. 4 parts water, 1 part sugar. What we didn't say is you want to use pure cane sugar. You want to use the whitest sugar you can. And I don't mean artificially white, like confectioner's sugar has other stuff in it. You don't want that. You want just plain cane sugar. You don't want a turbinado, you don't want brown sugar, you don't want raw sugar, you don't want anything that has any impurities in it. You just want plain white cane sugar. And if you want more information about this, there is a wonderful hummingbird organization that is got lots of information. So the biggest thing is don't put red food coloring in your sugar. Just sugar, water, boil, cool, put it out. Okay, let's go to the next question. I will read this one. Oh. Wait a minute, something happened. All right, we have a new question that came in. Thank you. This is from Mickey Makachar in the Philippines. Chris, aside from your audio and video tools, what other neat techie tools do you have for birding? Any fun Arduino tools? And how about you, Lois? You first, Chris.
I don't really have any. Just my camera. And I have a Nikon 300-2.8 camera. It's a pretty long, fast lens, and I'm not an avid birder, but when I see cool-looking birds, I like to take pictures. That's about all I got.
And I have no idea what an Arduino is. Do you know?
It's a little tiny computer, basically.
Oh, okay. I don't have any techie tools for birding other than an iPhone, and I got that webcam app, which is wonderful, and I really enjoyed it. In fact, I did a recording on a windy day out the back window. It's over an hour long. It's up on the YouTube channel, and I've had some friends who, like, they have an office in the basement and they don't have a window, so they put this up on their TV and just let it go. And on YouTube you can click the right button and make it loop so it never ends. So a perpetual hummingbird show. Anyway, let's go to another question, because I know we've got a couple more here that are going to be important. This one, Chris in Oregon, that's Chris Sabato, says, how can one keep rodents out and still feed the birds? Chris, tell us a little bit what's that question all about?
So last year, kind of maybe a little more than a year ago, during the pandemic, my daughter really wanted a bird feeder. She was super excited about it. And so we went to the store, the local hardware store, and picked up a bird feeder, cheap bird feeder, and some cheap seed, and hung it out in the yard, and was hoping we could see some birds. But what we saw was this. After less than about a week,
that tail is not a bird. we were sitting in our living room looking out the window, and the bird feeder was just swinging back and forth. And it's like, what the heck is going on out there? It's not that windy. And I got up and took a little closer look, and there's a big old rat sitting on the top of it. Yeah. So rats can jump, and if that was close enough to the ground, a rat could jump from the ground. If it wasn't, it could climb up the pole and then jump on it, or climb up the pole and jump down on it. Let's see that feeder again and analyze a little bit about it. So it is got a column with the seed. You can see the seeds in there. It's got a cover on the top, which is supposed to keep squirrels off. It doesn't work, but that's the theory anyway. Or keep the rain off, whatever. And then it's at the bottom of the tube. It has a place where the seed can spill out onto a tray. All right. So it is available to anything that can get to it, rats, squirrels, whatever. And there are a couple of ways that people try to make it squirrel-proof or rat-proof. One is to grease the pole so that it can't climb up the pole. Okay, well, that only works if the feeder is far enough away from everything that it can't jump from the hood of your car or from the bush or from the ground and get there. The other thing is that any big bird can come and make it swing and lots of stuff will fall out from the ground. Okay, so what can we do to make this better? Well, buy a different style of feeder is the easiest one.
So you're saying just the cheapest one is not the best one?
Yeah, well, if you don't mind feeding the rats and the squirrels, it's fine. In fact, if you don't mind feeding the rats and squirrels, you can just, put a picnic table out there and spread your seeds on that. And yeah, that works. And actually the birds like that, but it's also other critters would come. So, in this situation, because you've got that problem, the solution I think for you is going to be the same one that Ray Franklin had, and he got a bird feeder, and the big birds would come, the huge, the grackles, the big birds, and he wanted to feed the little ones, and so they would come and they would chase off the little ones and eat all the seed. So what we got for him was a suggestion of a Droll Yankee feeder. Droll, Droll, Yankee, like Yankee, feeder. And what it has the seeds, it has the openings for people, for the little birds to get into it, but it also has weighted resting places. So if the little birds land, and they'll sit there and then they'll go in and they'll eat. But if a big bird lands, it's heavy enough that it pushes down on the feeder things, and it puts a block. So that opening is no longer available because the heavy bird landed, pushed this down, and it closed. So it can't get the seeds. So unless it's going to be able to hover, which most grackles can't do, they're going to get frustrated because they can't get the seeds and it'll go away. So Droll Yankee is a good feeder for your situation as well as for the big bird situation.
Super.
But there's other ways to feed birds too. So this is a First Nature. That's the name of it. It is less than $5. You can get it at Walmart, and it has the things that you need to look for when you're considering hummingbird feeders. The nectar that the hummingbirds are drinking is down in that bottom red base, right down there. And they sit on little perches and they dip their little beaks down into the liquid, but the liquid is not right at the top of the opening. It's down, which means that a bee, a wasp, some other bird can't get it. Much nicer for the hummingbirds to not have all that competition. The second thing is that it has perches. This is very good. That means the hummingbird can rest while it drinks. That's very nice. Okay, so that's my preference, my suggestion. There are some beautiful hummingbird feeders that are a little bit problematic, just because the liquid is at the opening and it's right there, so the wasps and the other things can get it. So that's what you have to know about deciding what variety of hummingbird feeder you want to get. They make some that are basically just flat, and they don't have any column of nectar above it, which means you have to feed them water them all the time, change them all the time. So it's very good to have something like this. We used to go through, 1 or 2 cups a week. Now we're up to 1 or 2 cups a day. Just because we have so many hummingbirds living in us. It is so cool. Well, we've covered most of the questions we have now, and I am now going to go on and ask Chris to show us some of his bird pictures. I know he's a photographer, and so for the last 10 minutes or so, just show me birds. And I'll help you ID any if there's some you don't know what they are. Because I understand, Chris is a photographer, he's a maker, he's not a birder.
Yeah, I am not a birder, but I'd like I said, if I see a cool bird, I want to take a picture of it. And when Lois asked me to be on the show, I was like, I've got a handful of bird pictures. And so I kind of dug deep into my archives and found a few of them.
That's
So
a minor bird. You must have been in Hawaii.
this was in Hawaii.
And that looks like another Hawaiian bird that I've seen over there. This is a Brazilian cardinal. And a regular cardinal is all red. The North American cardinal is all red. If you put on a scarf and a big coat and all you can see is the head and the neck there, that we tease that these are on vacation from a really cold place. But they're not. This is a red-winged blackbird. Now you can't see too much of the red epaulets there, but when they are courting, they'll take their little epaulets and they'll fluff them up, and so you can see them, all fluffed up, and trying to court the ladies, get somebody to come and stay with them. In the spring here in California, the red-winged blackbird males like this come early. There's a whole gang of them. They come, they spread out, and they take this twig and that cattail, and this is my territory, and they'll get out there and they'll, do their thing. And then, a little bit later, the ladies show up, and they look like giant sparrows, brown speckles, and they, cruise around and figure out which one of those boys they want to hang out with. Anyway, I digress. So. Yes, that is even though you can't see it fluffed up. Oh, now that egret I don't usually see that with his mouth open. That's a great picture. Yeah.
This must have been Florida. A couple of these early ones, I'm not entirely sure where I took them, but I'm pretty sure this was in Florida and Orlando. Mm-hmm. And this, I think, was in Orlando as well.
Now that's a shorebird. I recognize that red beak, but I can't for the life of me remember its name.
I don't know.
No. Now we have here in California great blue herons, and this is also great blue heron. Notice the two little white streamers coming off the back of that head. Isn't that cool?
Ducks, obviously. I was in a hotel room on the 10th floor, and they just flew right by the window. I believe this is an egret as well. This is just the back of an egret. I think there's this little white thing that sits below. I think that's its neck. Like when the egrets fly, they have their neck cocked in. Mm-hmm. I think that's its throat. I think that's its throat. This was definitely in Florida as well. Yeah, mm-hmm. It was another case where I was high up in the hotel and the birds were just flying by the window.
Cool. So that, I believe, is a turkey vulture. And if you see it from the underneath side, which the last picture was, it is dark on the front edge of the wing, and then it gets to grayer on the back edge of the wing. So even if they're high up overhead, you can see, if you see that pattern, black in the front and gray in the back, TV, turkey vulture. Great shot.
And so this is in Oregon. Mm-hmm. And all that water behind you is a field. Mm-hmm. In Salem, we have a park. It's called Minto Brown Island Park. And the reason it's called Minto Brown Island Park is because usually once or twice a year, when we get a lot of rain, it floods and the park becomes an island. When it does that, the birds tend to hang out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And this again is at Minto, and this guy, and I believe this is a barred owl.
Beautiful.
And this picture just doesn't do justice. This bird scared me half to death. I was just walking down the path with my young daughter at the time, and we just turned, and there's this big old owl, not more than 8 feet from me, just sitting on this branch, just kind of staring at you.
You like great blue herons, don't you?
They're just they're the biggest, coolest birds that I see regularly. I guess that's this. There's a bunch of these ones, and these photos were all taken at Moss Lake in upstate New York. And Moss Lake is a hanging bog. And at least from what I've been told, in order for a hanging bog to exist, and a hanging bog is where you kind of can, like, it kind of feels like you can kind of like walk on the ground, but it's actually just a layer of vegetation that's floating on top of the water.
Chris, these are wonderful, but we're getting I run out of time
Running out
here,
of
so
time.
go quick a little bit, and
Go
then
quick,
let's.
sorry.
No,
But, yeah, in
they're
order-
beautiful. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And let's come back to Chris and and I will say thank you, thank you, thank you to all of the people who have made this show possible, specifically the DVE store and 090 for the production possibilities, the webinar and all that stuff. And then for all the folks who are here and helping out. And I don't know who's on crew in the back room right now, so I'll just say thank you, everybody. And that's it. This is Birding with Lois. I'm Lois. We're going to be on YouTube. We're going to do this again in 2 weeks, and I really appreciate your being here. And if you want to send us information, write to this email address right here, birdingwithlois@gmail.com.